Hello and welcome. This is going to be episode 12 of Miscellaneous, part 3 of my little 3-part series on Brexit, the Yellow Vest protests in France, and the upcoming European Parliament elections. This one's titled The Crash. So, let's run over what we've brought together from our 2 previous episodes. Part 1, Brexit. Key point. The European budget is going to have a $42 billion or 42 billion euro shortfall for the you know what? I think that figure's wrong. I actually think it's 52 billion euros and it's 42 billion pounds. I'm just going to leave that there because we're going to go with that figure. So anyway, 42 billion euros for the long-term plans, like all of their obligations, like pensions, all the rest of it. $42 billion is now missing from the long-term financial plan for the European Union. There is 15.2 billion euros that will be missing for the next year's budget. That is if there is a no-deal Brexit on the 29th of March, which at this point is looking incredibly likely because they're not going to be able to make a deal in the next 25 days. I don't see that happening. They've tried to make a deal, it's failed because no one wants to, you cannot get agreement. There is too many sides wanting too many different things, which means no one can get enough of a majority to get a vote through the British Parliament, which means they're just rocketing towards the 29th of March, no deal Brexit. Part 2 was about the Yellow Vests. The key takeaway points we took from that: people from rural areas, they were protesting against tax hikes, they were protesting against the high cost of living, and they were protesting against equality. That's been going on for the last 16 weeks. It's been going on over winter. There's been, I think, 11 people have died. Something like 2,000 people have been imprisoned. There's been 8,000 arrests. More than 20 people have lost their sight. 6 people have lost hands. It's been pretty damn brutal. So, how do these things collide? You might be wondering. Well, where's this money going to come from? There's 15.2 billion euros that is now missing from the EU budget. Well, that will be missing. Funny thing about the EU budget. Do you know what the EU budget gets spent on? I have a Wikipedia page here that I'm going to read out to you. Common agricultural policy. One of the things that the EU pays for. This is just straight off Wikipedia. I'll link it in the chat. But it was introduced in 1962 and has undergone several changes since then to reduce the cost from 71% of the EU budget in 1984 to 39% in 2013. Still, 39%, it's like 40% of the budget is the common agricultural policy of the EU. It also, and also to consider rural development in its aims. Rural, hang on, where have I seen rural before? Beep. Yes, rural, keyword, note that. So where does this money get spent on? It's like 40% of the EU budget. Where does it get spent? Well, let's just look further down on this Wikipedia page. Equity amongst member states. CAP beneficiaries in 2004. Do you know what the single largest beneficiary of EU subsidies for agriculture is? France. France was getting 22%. The last figure that we've got in here, 22% of that 40% of the EU budget goes to France. Yellow Vests. What's going to happen? Here's the thing. I think it was the Deputy Finance Minister of the European Commission. European Commission? European Union? Anyway, they announced that if there was a no-deal Brexit, this shortfall was going to be made out of a 50-50 split. 50 50. 50% of it was going to be made out of tax. New taxes to raise this missing money here. The other 50% was going to be made out of cuts. Cuts to spending. Are you perhaps starting to piece together how this is going to be a huge fucking problem for France? Because 50% new taxes. They were complaining about tax hikes. 50% cut to spending. Well, 40% of the EU's budget is agricultural. The biggest beneficiary of agricultural is France. Cost of living. Do you reckon the EU's going to be cutting their cost of administration? No, they aren't. All of the politicians are still going to keep their money. They're not going to take a 5% pay cut, are they? Because that's the thing. This money here represents 5% of the budget of the EU. 5% of their money is going to disappear on the 29th of March. That 5% they're going to make up out of taxes and cuts to spending, but the cuts to spending aren't going to be for the politicians and the administrators and Jean-Paul, what's his name? Jean-Paul Juncker and, Guy Verhofstadt. They're not going to be taking pay cuts. They're probably going to get pay rises. Inequality. That's 3 for 3 now. We've got, it's going to affect farmers, rural areas. It's going to involve tax hikes. Bam. It's going to involve, the cost of living because all that money's going to be gone. Bam. It's going to tick the box for inequality. Fantastic. And when's this happening? 29th of March. I'm not a meteorologist, but I'm pretty sure that's not winter anymore, is it? It's not going to be snowing when all of these things hit at once. All of these things are going to hit at once. And the EU is going to be stuck with quite a predicament because they're going to have two options. They can either give preferential treatment to France, which is going to piss off every single other country in the European Union because they're already not happy with the fact that France gets 22% of the agricultural subsidies from the EU. They're not happy about that. The alternative is the EU can be like, well, we're not going to give preferential treatment to France, in which case they're just going to rise up and guillotine Macron. Macron is going to be screwed. His popularity is in the dumps anyway. You remember back on, was it Armistice Day? The 11th of the 11th, I believe that was it. And he was there in Paris and he gave out this speech, which everyone was like, oh God, he sure showed Trump. Because he gave this speech and it was all about nationalism is the opposite of patriotism, which is, it doesn't make sense. Patriotism is the manifestation of nationalistic thought, but yeah, anyway, they're two sides of the same coin, or two different levels. One of it's a ideology and the other one is the way that ideology presents itself. Anyway, so when Macron got up there and was saying, oh, patriotism is nationalism is the opposite or the antithesis of patriotism to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's popularity was 3 times higher than Macron's at that point. Macron wishes he was as popular. Put it this way, 1 week later, 290,000 people got out in the streets to demonstrate against Macron. So, maybe he should be looking after his own nation more. A little bit of nationalism maybe would have helped Macron. Instead, he was too busy trying to be, a pan-European globalist sort of whatever the hell that is. Jupiterian, I believe is how he described himself. It's not paying off for him though, is it? People are pissed. So, all of these things are going to hit at once. EU has two choices. Preferential treatment for France, which is going to piss off all of those other countries, like the Visegrad groups, like Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia. They're not going to like it. They're on thin ice as it is already with the European Union. You see, people like Salvini in Italy. He's not that happy with the European Union either. There is the number of right-wing populist not right-wing, sorry. We've already had a video on right-wing, but the amount of populist nationalist parties that are popping up all over Europe who are basically saying, screw the European Union, we want to put our country first. They're popping up everywhere and they're growing rapidly. I think the last country that didn't have a populist nationalist party was, I think, Spain, and theirs just popped up a short while ago with the Vox party. They're rapidly gaining in the figures too. So they're kind of screwed. They can either lose France or risk losing a whole bunch of other countries in the upcoming European Parliament elections, because 29th of March, right, 26th to the 29th of May. That's when the European Parliament elections are. I believe this year is going to play out over the course of 2 months. It's going to end up with the grand finale is going to be in the European Parliament elections. I don't know what is going to happen. My current prediction is that you are going to see a hell of a lot of populist nationalistic parties are going to absolutely sweep the European Parliament. They're going to be popping up everywhere. There is going to be Nigel Farage's, Salvini's, Marine Le Pen's, Viktor Orban's. They are going to be everywhere across the European Union come May. And the reason for it is because of Brexit and the yellow vests. It's a perfect storm. I'm really happy I'm in Australia because it means I'm on the opposite side of the world to this shit, and it means that if it goes bad, I'm not going to be there. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little 3-part, mini-series, and maybe part conspiracy theory as well. But if you've enjoyed it, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and maybe share it too if you want to help me even more. But anyway, this has been Miscellaneous, and I'll see you around.